What if the evil surrounding your life isn't loud, but calculated, quiet, and deadly? Persistent? Imagine discovering that the draining relationships in your life weren't random. They were assignments from darkness. Are you ready to expose 8 hidden signs of truly evil people before they sabotage your peace and purpose? Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Transcript. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. One of the most valuable skills you can develop in life is the ability to discern character, and I don't mean simply deciding whether you like someone or not. That's preference, not discernment I'm talking about. Something much deeper, something rooted in careful observation and a genuine understanding of human nature, because here's the reality: there are people in this world who do not have your best interests at heart. That may sound harsh, but it's an unfortunate truth. Some people are malicious, some are deceitful, and some evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Will manipulate you not because they're lost or confused, but because they actively thrive on destruction. If you don't recognize the warning signs, you'll invite these people into your life, mistaking them for friends, partners, or mentors, when in reality they are obstacles or barriers between you and the person you are striving to become. Now you might be thinking, well, I'd like to believe in the goodness of people, I'd like to assume the best, and that's noble, admirable even, but it's also naive, because assuming the best in someone without assessing their evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Actions isn't optimism, it's blindness, and blindness is dangerous. When you can't see clearly, you fall into traps, you get deceived, and before you know it, you're entangled in relationships or environments that drain you, demoralize you, and sometimes even break you. So how do you develop awareness? How do you train yourself to recognize those who operate in bad faith? The first step is to pay real attention, not just to what people say, but to what they do. This is crucial because words are easy, talk is cheap, and bad people, especially the manipulative evil, doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Ones are often incredibly skilled at using words to disguise their true nature. They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, presenting themselves as kind, generous, or wise, but if you truly watch them, if you observe their actions closely, you'll start to see cracks in the facade. One of the most reliable warning signs of a bad person is inconsistency. Their words and actions don't align. They promise loyalty but betray trust. When it benefits them, they preach virtue, but live in deception. They claim to support you, yet their actions evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Undermine you, and here's the trick: they don't want you to notice this discrepancy. In fact, they rely on you not noticing. They assume you won't be paying close enough attention to see the pattern, but if you cultivate awareness, if you train yourself to watch rather than just listen, you'll start catching these inconsistencies, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. Another key sign to watch for is how a person treats those who can do nothing for them. This is a major test of character, because anyone can be kind when it evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Benefits them. Anyone can pretend to be generous when they know there's something to gain, but if you want to see a person's true nature, watch how they treat those beneath them in status. How do they speak to the waitress at a restaurant? How do they behave toward the janitor in their office? How do they act when there's no potential reward for their kindness? A person who is cruel to the powerless is revealing something fundamental about their soul, and that cruelty won't stay confined to those beneath them. It will eventually spill. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Over into every area of their life, and if you get too close, you'll become a target. Now, let's talk about deception, because manipulation and deceit are the primary weapons of bad people. This is how they control others, how they get what they want, without revealing their true intentions. And the frightening thing is, many of them are highly skilled at deception. They've spent years, sometimes decades, refining their ability to twist reality in their favor, and if you're not careful, if you're not vigilant, you can fall for it. One of the most common evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Manipulation tactics is gaslighting. You've probably heard this term before, but let's define it clearly. Gaslighting is when someone distorts your perception of reality to make you doubt your own judgment. It's psychological warfare, and it's incredibly effective, because if someone can make you question your own memory, your own perceptions, your own feelings, then they can control you. They can make you believe whatever suits them. They can paint themselves as the victim when they were the aggressor. They can convince you. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. That you're overreacting when you're responding appropriately, and over time this warps your ability to trust yourself, and when you can't trust yourself, you're lost. So how do you protect yourself from deception? How do you guard against manipulation? The first step is to trust your instincts. If something feels off in an interaction, if there's a discrepancy between what's being said and what's actually happening, pay attention to that feeling. Don't dismiss it, don't rationalize it away. Your subconscious is incredibly good at evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Picking up on inconsistencies, even if you can't immediately articulate them. The second step is to ask yourself, does this person make me feel confused? This is important, because when you're dealing with an honest, straightforward person, things are clear. Communication is direct, you know where you stand. But when you're dealing with a manipulator, there's always a lingering fog of confusion. One moment they're warm and affectionate, the next they're cold and distant. One moment they praise you, the next They tear you down and you evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Start to wonder, am I the problem? Am I imagining things? No, you're not. That confusion is intentional, it's a tactic, and if you find yourself in a relationship, whether personal or professional, where you're constantly second-guessing reality, that's a major red flag. The third step is to observe how a person reacts when confronted with the truth. This is a critical test because good, decent, honest people can acknowledge when they've made a mistake. They can admit when they're wrong, but a manipulator, they will never admit fault. Instead, they'll deflect. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. They'll shift flame, they'll twist the conversation around until suddenly you're the problem. You bring up a valid concern and instead of addressing it, they explode in anger, guilt trip you, or make you feel like you were wrong to even bring it up. That's not normal conflict resolution, that's emotional manipulation. So what do you do when you recognize these behaviors? The answer is simple but not easy. You distance yourself. You set boundaries. You don't engage in arguments with people who are committed to distorting reality because you won't win. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. You can't reason with someone who has no respect for the truth. And here's the final, most important thing: you cannot change these people. This is a trap that many fall into. If I just love them enough, if I just explain things clearly, if I just give them another chance, maybe they'll change. No, people don't change unless they want to, and bad people, the truly deceitful, manipulative, toxic ones, don't want to change because their tactics work for them. They get what they want, they thrive in the chaos they create. Your job is not to fix them. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Your job is to protect yourself, to cultivate awareness, to build relationships with people who add to your life, not drain it, because your future, your success, your happiness depends on the company you keep. And if you allow bad people into your inner circle, you will pay the price. So be vigilant, be discerning, and most importantly, never ignore what your gut is telling you. One of the most damning characteristics of a bad person, one of the clearest warning signs that you're dealing with someone truly dangerous, is their refusal to take. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Responsibility for anything, not just the little things, their entire approach to life. It's a fundamental failure to confront reality. They will always point the finger outward. It's always someone else's fault, and if you don't develop the ability to recognize this trait early on, you risk spending years entangled in the psychological games of those who will never admit they're wrong. And nothing is more exhausting or soul draining than that they surround themselves with enablers, people who will absorb the blame and carry their. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Failures because deep down they know that without this support, their entire illusion would collapse. They seek out individuals Often good-hearted and conscientious people who are willing to shoulder responsibility on their behalf. This is a fascinating pattern, because people with strong moral character frequently become targets for those who refuse to take accountability for their own actions. But why does this happen? Why are bad people so drawn to good people? The answer is simple. Bad people need good people. To evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Survive if you have integrity, believe in fairness, and try to see the best in others. You are precisely the kind of person a manipulator or a blame shifter wants around. You will make excuses for them. You'll say, maybe they had a tough childhood, or maybe they just need more time to grow. Meanwhile, they will continue using you as a shield against reality. Now let's take this a step further. What happens when someone refuses to take responsibility for their actions? What kind of person do they become over time? They become resentful, and evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Resentment is one of the most toxic psychological states a person can inhabit. If you go through life blaming everyone else for your problems, you eventually start believing the world itself is unjust. You convince yourself that others are conspiring against you. Once you believe that, you begin to justify all sorts of destructive behavior. This is how people manipulate others, not just to avoid blame, but to punish those they perceive as responsible for their suffering. They sabotage relationships, destroy friendships, and undermine. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Colleagues, all because they have convinced themselves that life has treated them unfairly. The tragedy is that the more they refuse to take responsibility, the worse their situation becomes. Life is already difficult, even when you take full responsibility for your actions. But if you reject accountability, life doesn't just become difficult, it becomes unbearable. Every time you avoid blame, refuse to learn from a mistake, or shift the burden onto someone else, you lose control over your own destiny. I see this often in people. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. With a victim mentality, they say things like, I can't succeed because the system is rigged, or I'm not happy because others keep bringing me down. What they don't realize is that every time they say this, they reinforce their own helplessness. They teach themselves that they have no control over their lives. And once you believe that, once you convince yourself that you are not the primary agent in your own story, you become a puppet in someone else's narrative. And here's the thing: bad people want you to believe that you have. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. No control. They want you to think that everything is just fate, luck, oppression, or whatever excuse suits them at the moment. Because the moment you take control of your life, the moment you say, I am responsible for where I am and I can change it, you become immune to their manipulation. You stop playing their game. So how do you protect yourself from these kind of people? First, pay attention to patterns. If someone in your life always has a reason why nothing is ever their fault, That's a massive red flag if every time something goes wrong the evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Immediately look for someone else to blame. You need to be very careful because if you're not, you will become their scapegoat second. Hold people accountable, don't let them rewrite history if you see someone twisting the truth if you see them avoiding responsibility, call it out at least in your own mind. If you don't, you will start to doubt your own perceptions, and that's exactly what they want. They want you confused, second guessing yourself, because the more uncertain you are, the easier you are to control and finally take full responsibility for. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Your own life, don't wait for permission to succeed. Don't let other people's excuses become your excuses, because at the end of the day, the only thing worse than dealing with someone who refuses to take responsibility is becoming someone who refuses to take responsibility. And if you're not careful, if you let these people influence you for too long, that's exactly what can happen. Be vigilant, watch for the signs, and never ever let someone else's lack of accountability drag you down with them. One of the most dangerous and insidious evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Traits of person can possess one that often hides in plain sight is envy. It is a quiet, corrosive force. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a flashing sign saying, "Here, I am ruining everything good in your life." No. It festers in the background, disguised as a concerned friend, a helpful colleague, or even a loving family member, but beneath the surface it seeks to tear you down. And here's the thing, truly destructive individuals are full of envy. They can't stand to see you succeed. They can't stand to see you grow. In their evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Mind your success is a direct attack on their failures, and this is where resentment comes into play. Envy alone might just be a private, bitter emotion, but resentment, that's a weapon. That's when a person starts thinking, not only do I wish I had what you have, but I also think you don't deserve it, and if I can't have it, let's connect this to what we've already discussed: awareness, recognizing the traits of bad people before they infiltrate your life is crucial, and envy is one of those traits. If you don't catch it early, it can. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Poison your relationships, your confidence, and your ability to move forward. We talked about manipulation and deception. Well, here's how. Envy ties in people who are envious of your success will never admit it directly. That would require honesty. Instead, they disguise their resentment as advice or concern. You've seen this before, haven't you? You tell someone about an exciting goal or project, and instead of encouragement, they plant doubt in your mind. Oh, that's a really competitive field. Are you sure you're cut out for that? Or you know, most evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. People fail when they try something like that. I just don't want to see you get disappointed. They say these things as if they care about you, as if they are trying to protect you, but they're not. They're trying to keep you small. They see you climbing and they feel threatened, so they pull you back down to where they are comfortable. Now you might think maybe they don't mean any harm, maybe they're just being realists. I see, but ask yourself, would they say the same thing to someone else? Would they react the same way if it were their own? Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Success on the line. The truth is, people who struggle with envy often have a pattern. They only discourage those they secretly see as competition, and then there's accountability. As we discuss, bad people never take responsibility for their shortcomings. And what does that lead to? Envy, because when you refuse to own your failures, when you refuse to acknowledge that your success or lack of it is due to your own actions, the only option left is to blame others. And who do they blame? The ones who are succeeding, the ones moving forward. While evil doesn't always shout, it often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. They remain stuck instead of thinking, maybe I need to work harder, make better choices, push myself more. They think it's not fair. They had better opportunities, they had more luck. They don't deserve it. When resentment builds, it doesn't just stay inside a person, it leaks into their actions, their words, their interactions with you, and that's where envy turns into sabotage. Sometimes it's subtle, passive-aggressive comments, dismissive attitudes, a lack of support when you need it most. Sometimes it's direct, spreading rumors. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Trying to discredit you, working against you, behind your back, and the worst part, if you're not careful, their envy can start to infect you. If you let them plant seeds of doubt, you might start questioning yourself. Maybe they're right, maybe I don't deserve this. Maybe I should hold back, not try so hard, not dream so big. Don't let that happen. But that's exactly what they want. They want you to shrink, because if you do, they won't have to face their own failures. If you stay small, they can remain comfortable. Now let's flip. The evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Perspective, 'cause there's a lesson here for you too, and this part might sting a little. Ask yourself, are you harboring envy toward others? Do you secretly resent someone else's success? If so, you need to address it immediately. Envy is poison. If you don't root it out, it will destroy you from the inside out. The right response to seeing someone succeed isn't resentment, it's learning. Instead of asking, why them and not me, ask, what did they do that I haven't? Instead of tearing them down, observe their habits, mindset, and work. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Ethic, use their success as inspiration, not as a source of bitterness. And if you find yourself surrounded by envious people, those who subtly or openly resent your progress, you have a choice to make. You either let them drag you down or you rise above and distance yourself. There is no middle ground. Spend enough time around those who resent success, and you will absorb their mindset. That's the fastest way to sabotage your own potential. Remember what I said earlier, bad people don't always come with the warning label, but evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. If you pay attention, if you develop awareness, you'll start to see patterns you'll recognize. Who genuinely supports you and who secretly wants to see you fail, and once you see it, you can't unsee it when you recognize envy for what it truly is, a reflection of someone else's insecurity, not a measure of your worth. You take away its power, you stop seeking validation from those who don't want you to succeed, you stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand, and most importantly, you stop feeling guilty for outgrowing. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Those who refuse to grow themselves because at the end of the day your success isn't about them, it's about you, it's about your capabilities and how far you're willing to push yourself. If someone else can't handle that's their problem, not yours, but don't let their resentment become your limitation. There's too much at stake and you have too much potential to waste at trying to appease people who are never going to clap for you anyway. I'm not talking about someone who occasionally struggles to see things from another. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Perspective, we all do that. I mean someone who fundamentally does not care about the impact of their actions on others, someone who, when you're suffering, either sees it as irrelevant or worse, as an opportunity. You need to recognize this. If you don't, you'll end up making excuses for them, thinking you can change them, or even worse, believing that their treatment of you is somehow deserved. Now let's tie this back to the bigger picture. Earlier I talked about awareness, being able to spot the warning signs. Well, this is one of the most. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Important ones, because if you fail to recognize someone's lack of empathy, you open yourself up to immense psychological damage. People without empathy don't just accidentally hurt others, they do it systematically, without remorse, and often in ways that aren't immediately obvious. How does that work? Go back to the second key point. Manipulation and deception. A person who lacks empathy is often a master manipulator. Why? Because they don't feel the moral responsibility that you do. They don't experience guilt, shame the way decent people do. If they evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Lie to you and you catch them, they don't feel bad about it. That's a completely different psychological framework. It means they will twist reality, not just to protect themselves, but to control you. Have you ever had someone make you doubt your own emotions, your own reactions? You tell them, hey, that really hurt me, and they look at you like you're crazy, like you're the problem for even bringing it up. That's a tactic. It's designed to ensure you never stand up for yourself, because the moment you start questioning your own feelings, your own evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Perception of reality. You become easier to control, and if they can control your emotions, they can control your actions. Now let's move to the third key point: lack of accountability. Why do they refuse to take responsibility for Their actions think about it if you lack empathy. You don't actually care about the consequences of your actions on others. If you hurt someone and they tell you and you feel no internal guilt, why would you take responsibility? The answer is instead you'd shift the blame. You'd say you're just too sensitive, or that's not what I. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Mentor, why are you always so dramatic? Do you see the pattern? This is a fundamentally dangerous way of thinking. Accountability is what allows people to grow. If you can't admit when you're wrong, you can never improve, and if you never improve, you either stagnate or, worse, descend into deeper levels of malevolence, and that's when envy and resentment take hold. That brings us to the fourth key point: envy and resentment. Why do people who lack empathy often harbor deep resentment? Because when you don't take responsibility for your own life, you evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Blame others for your failures, and when you blame others, you begin to resent them, their success, their happiness, their ability to form real connections. That's a toxic cycle. It doesn't just destroy their own life, it poisons everyone around them and the puppet that has to respond to live. But have you ever had someone in your life who simply could not be happy for you, who whenever you accomplish something great found a way to downplay it, or worse, made you feel guilty for it? That's resentment. That's someone who sees your evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Progress is a personal attack, and the worst part, it's often the people closest to you. Friends, family, colleagues, the ones you expect to be your biggest supporters. But here's the harsh truth: some people would rather see you fail than face the fact that they've done nothing with their own lives. And now we return to empathy, because when someone lacks empathy, they don't just feel resentment, they act on it. They will actively try to sabotage you, sometimes subtly with little comments designed to make you second guess. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Yourself, other times more overtly taking rumors, taking credit for your work, even turning others against you. And the terrifying thing, because they lack empathy, they don't even see a problem with what they're doing in their mind. They're justified. They convince themselves that you deserve to be taken down a notch, that you owe them something, that their feelings of inadequacy are somehow your fault. Now you might be thinking, okay, I get it. There are bad people out there, but what do I do about it? That brings us to the final, most important point: how to evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Protect yourself, because if you don't, these people will drain you. They will steal your time, your energy, and your confidence. They will make you smaller just to make themselves feel bigger, and you cannot allow that. So what do you do? The first step is simple but difficult. You have to be willing to walk away, not just physically but mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. Stop seeking their approval. Stop hoping they'll change. They won't, at least not unless they choose to. And people like this rarely do. If someone shows you again and again that evil doesn't always shout, It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. They lack empathy that they refuse, accountability that they resent your success. Believe them, and once you do, once you make the choice to distance yourself from toxic people, something incredible happens. You start attracting better people, people who lift you up instead of tearing you down, people who celebrate your wins instead of resenting them, people who take responsibility for their own lives instead of blaming you for theirs. That's where real transformation begins. Because when you surround yourself with strong, motivated, kind, evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Individuals, you become one of them, and suddenly all the energy you used to waste trying to fix broken people, it gets redirected into building your own life. But make no mistake, this isn't easy. It requires courage, it requires self-respect, and while it may require enduring some loneliness, but in that space something new will grow. Something better, and in the end that's the real lesson. Your life is too short and your potential too great to waste it on people who do not care about you, so be ruthless with your boundaries. Be evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential. Disciplined with your energy, and above all be unwavering in your commitment to becoming the best version of yourself. Evil doesn't always shout. It often whispers, cloaked in familiarity, and thrives where you are most vulnerable. Discernment isn't optional, it's essential.